Hello.
There we go. Let's try that. Morning, Maurice. How you doing?
I'm good. Maurice, you with us as well? I'm Matthew, by the way. I'm Maurice's
Hey, Matthew.
accounting counterpart.
There we go. I think I had heard something about it, and I knew Maurice is logging in. There it goes. Looks like he's
There we
connected.
go.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Apologies for the slightly late start here. We'll go ahead and set it up to be broadcast to the group so that everybody's getting the info here.
So you do a live stream to your group also?
Yes, we do. So this one, there we go. Here we go.
You usually have people join on Zoom as well with you, or?
Yes. So we have a couple people that join on Zoom. We
Nice.
also have a couple people that that join through following the Facebook Live. There's kind of a whole range that we work with.
How big is your group?
So our group is right at about 1,200
Oh, nice.
for
A lot of work running a group.
moms. It is. But we're continuing to kind of grow. The whole goal behind this is trying to get a meaningful group of bookkeepers, accountants, tax professionals, et cetera, kind of getting everybody set up, making sure that we're pointing them in the direction of good tools, all of those sorts of things. So trying to make sure that they're able to get the most out of their time in this effort. So that's a big important thing to us.
I think
Morning,
that's
Belita.
a noble venture, of course. There's a lot of different groups, so you've got to be selective as to which ones you want to be part of and how you're going to use your time. And it's always great to have a community of people that can collaborate with you to figure out best tips and tricks and best tools to utilize, so you don't have to go it alone and try to figure it out yourself.
Yeah, we want to try and take out some of the headache and heartburn from some of these events. So, all right, looks like we're all live and all that's functioning, so that's good. So we'll have a few more people joining in, I'm sure, as we get started. There's always a kind of a stream that trickles in. We're starting to get a couple folks jumping on the live. So welcome everyone. Hopefully everyone's having a pretty good week this week. We're going to introduce Maurice and Matthew. So these guys are with LedgerSync. So you guys can talk a little bit more about what you do and what the tools are and all those things.
I'll go first, Matt, I guess.
Go for it.
All right. So I'm Maurice, founder of LedgerSync, and it's a pleasure to be with you, Kyle, and the group this morning. And
We're glad to have you.
yeah, appreciate it. Early on the West Coast for us.
It is.
We call it
It's
California lazy. We like to slowly wake up in the morning when we can.
Right.
All you East Coast people make it so hard. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. That's true. I think we're only one time zone ahead of you, but a lot of our group is two. So yeah.
Great. So yeah, we're all about efficiency and making things work with LedgerSync, and making things work better for you guys in terms of accounting and bookkeeping. And we'll go through it and I'll kind of segue. I'll talk about the product and everything, and Matthew will jump in. But as a segue into Matthew, he's definitely an inspiration for me and the company, and it's a pleasure to have him on because Matt's a huge asset, and I'll let Matthew kind of take over from here. But yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
So my name is Matthew Fulton. I'm with an accounting firm called Parkway Business Solutions, as well as a Facebook group called QB Community Live. Like this, it's a group made up of bookkeepers, accountants, tax professionals, all focused on the idea of together we all succeed, helping each other out. When you run into questions, challenges, technical, like this, trying to figure out applications, so forth. So very familiar doing these type of live streams. I will say that unfortunately at the moment, I'm not in the group. So any comments that are coming through on the live stream, I'm hoping you help bring those in for us because I can't see them at this time.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye for them.
So my history with LedgerSync, Maurice and I started working together back in, geez, I think it was like 2016 or so, something like that. When I was looking for solutions for my own firm, is how can I handle one of my biggest pain points, which is collecting, our client data, the statements, images, that type of stuff. And we found LedgerSync, started working with them. I'm a nerd. I like to break things. So when I was in the application, I kept trying to manipulate data and like URLs and this and that, and kept kind of breaking stuff. And they finally reached out and said, "What are you doing?" And it led to a deeper conversation, created a much deeper relationship. And then just recently, I've come in as a more official position to really try to help as that bridge, the voice of an accountant user to the different companies to explain how we use it, help answer questions for people, talk about workflows, and help spread the word about this great application. So I love to ask people, and again, if you'll kind of feedback of the people joining us both here and live, how many people have heard of LedgerSync before, and how many people have looked into it before? It'd be great to know that.
I think it's a fairly small number at this point. So I think there's a couple of us. We've just kind of started getting to use it a little bit. We've got one or two bank accounts that are notorious for not being able to give up good information, and some clients that have bank accounts that are I think they have like somebody in the background that runs a typewriter to type up the statements. I wish I was kidding, but
it's got a bad ribbon too, of course, right? It's got the bad ribbon.
Yeah, I don't. A bank account that struggles to allow for login, and then PDF statements being a challenge is difficult these days. So there are some instances that we've seen where that's a problem. And that's where I think some of these tools, especially for accounts that require every time the client logs in or something like that, requiring that they have a couple extra steps in there. Every time they log into QuickBooks, they have to get a code sent and update and refresh their books and things. We have some of those as well. And so that's some of the areas and challenges where we think this could be a very, very helpful tool. And it may not be one that they use for every client, but there may be some clients that they have that they just struggle constantly to get statements. And it's something that they could maybe even have the business owner sign up to get set up so that it's using their personal login, but the bookkeeper accountant doesn't have to touch it, right? So speak to some of those things.
Yeah, so I'll dive into the product here in just one quick second, but you nailed a big part of the intent and purpose behind LedgerSync. We should real quickly try to address the big elephant in the room, and that elephant, of course, is bank feeds. Anybody who's been doing this for some time now knows that they are the bane of our existence. They are the best thing in the world and the worst thing in the world at the same time, because they allow us to get the data we need without as much manual, chasing. But these financial institutions are always changing these portals, and they're always changing the login thing. So you end up having clients that have to go and update passwords. They have to change this and that. And everything is plagued by that. But LedgerSync really helps, like you just talked about, where if the owner is signing on into, the owner of the company signing into LedgerSync, they can access and set up the username and password. And when they do that, what ends up happening is when you're setting them first up, you set them up with a text message, SMS inside of the system. So you can send even just a message over to them, but I'm jumping ahead a bit. So I show my screen here, but does it sound like a good time we should jump in and kind of show some of the product here?
Yeah, I definitely would, because that's something that I think will be
go
helpful.
for it, Matt.
Cool. Kyle, again, do me a favor. If there are questions coming in, I always love interaction. Please feel free to interrupt.
I've got the chats open, so I'm keeping an eye out.
Beautiful. So basically what we're looking at right now is the LedgerSync dashboard. We're based on the assumption that you have created an account, and what you would see as an accountant user is on the left-hand side here, all of your individual clients would be listed on that side here. And of course, as you have a list that grows, you've got the search capability. Now, when you first log in and you see a dashboard, you're going to see this kind of overall data that's letting you know, like, hey, everything's connected great, or by the way, we need some assistance for you to help us reconnect this relationship. So it's populating so you can manage that process very easily. When you set up and you add a brand new client, this is one of the things I talked about just earlier. If I click on my client list, I can come up here and add a brand new client very easily. And when I do this, type in client name, I can put their email address in, I can put their phone number in, and then send them an SMS invitation as well as an email, so they can literally click from their phone, click in, have it pull up, and be able to start to do the login process. I'm not going to add one here, but what I am going to do is come down, and I've got my own, I use Dialpad, a VoIP system. So I've got my number programmed into this. So we could come in, modify, but let's go invite client by phone. I'm going to say yes. And in just a quick second here, I've got it on my dial pad. It's on do not disturb, so we don't get pinged, of course. You'll see I immediately am getting a link right over here that's going to say, hey, you've been invited to join LedgerSync. So I'm going to copy the link because I want to do it in a, incognito browser so we can do the same thing at the same time. They would just, inside theirs, they just click it, right? It's just simple as that. I did it last night with a client. We were out to dinner, made it super easy. And now it's okay, let's connect your first bank account. So find your bank, you'll do a search for it. We've got some icons, click on whichever one it is that you need. And then they're going to start to go through the process of doing those connections with their own authentication, username, password, to bring it into that portal. So the beauty of this is, in this type of a scenario, you don't have to know their username or password at all. They're the ones that are managing it and bringing that data into LedgerSync. You can, of course, also set it up with your own username password. If, let's say, you have accountant access, you could do it that way. But we do like to stress the fact that as these banks continue to evolve, we're starting to notice that more and more of them are requiring the official admin of the bank to be the one to make any connections to outside applications. It's an important part I want to make sure people understand. It makes that connection solid and stay longer. Does that make good sense?
Yeah, it does, because that's one of the things that we have definitely seen for some of the accounts that we work with. A lot of the banks are kind of changing strategy and changing how they make these things run, because there's an awful lot that can get really hairy and complicated, and having to ping clients back and forth. And especially say you had a client who was a realty broker and also had 3 or 4 other businesses that they're part of. Being a realtor, they'll generally pick up the phone and answer. But if you send them an email, it could be collecting dust for 150 years.
Good point.
Yeah.
So especially the ability to be able to ping them by text. I think we have a client that we're about to try and strongly encourage to use this method, so that we can eliminate that back and forth to get statements. And the bank feed data connection, usually pretty good, usually not an issue with that bank, but statements are a huge issue.
Yeah.
And the accountant login for their site works kind of in that you have to physically call the bank during business hours and reset the password every single time, sort of way.
That's bad.
And then the statements you do get look like they came off of a typewriter from the back room. So
Right.
it could be an intern. I might be wrong about the monkey part. I don't know. But either way,
They're getting paid the same either way, basically.
And I just want to add, just to confirm this, to reiterate, because when I talk with the providers, et cetera, the banking data providers, The read-only access is severely being restricted. Like you said, Kyle, the banks are kind of taking a different strategy with the read-only. So there's a lot of reasons why banks are now starting to restrict read-only access to third-party systems, be it QuickBooks, LedgerSync, Venmo, whatever it is. There's a lot of security reasons that where they don't want someone who has only read-only access to ship data to a third-party system. Only the account owner has the right, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Only the account owner has the right to send data to third-party systems. So the read-only access is being restricted, and it's going to go, it's just going to get worse and worse for read-only.
Well, and the FTC guidelines that have been updated as far as security measures and things, that was something that I recently did a consult with the IT guy for us that's in our the BNI group that I'm part of for another business. And I told him, I've just given you your commercial for the next like 6 months because he didn't know about that. I didn't know about the updates until recently, but yeah, if you're handling any kind of client payment processing information at all, so we're gonna have him get on here and do probably a full scale webinar and walk through like, okay, here's all the requirements, here's what you've got to do, hit me up and I can help you walk through these security measures step by step. And so that's also a major concern and why some of these banks are making those changes. So they have no choice.
Quick shout out in regards to that before I turn back over to it. Allison Ball with Liscio. They have a group, it's called The Grove. Basically, it's an educational community. They are actively working on a presentation. They've been working on this for months, specific to FTC and how to work with it, how to survive it in a sense. So for those that are concerned and worried about it, keep an eye out for that. It's with Liscio, The Grove. It's going to be free at the beginning. When people first jump into it. And
I think a lot of our folks have heard of Liscio.
Okay.
Or have had some people use that currently. And so they're seeing a lot of those feeds. A lot of our folks also are using Keeper. And so we did a live demo with Ben not too long ago. So Ben is an awesome guy. Always cheerful and delightful. I don't know what he puts in his coffee, but I need some of that.
He's actually just that way. I've actually been at shows with him, and he's a lot of fun. So
he is.
All right. Before I allow us to go too scrolled off, I think I'll bring it back just real quickly here to make sure we're taking care of your guys' time. So basically what I did is we've now invited our client, and once you add on that bank account, what's going to happen is you're going to see them listed here. And I'm saying bank, I mean financial institution. That means bank and credit card, of course, right? So the accounts will be listed on the side here. You'll see that some of them may be a little bit small on the screen right now, but you'll say transactions and statements, and then other ones will say checks. And that's because we have partnered with MasterCard on the back end for our transaction fetching, that bank feed itself, trying to find the best partner to get the best feed of transactional data as we possibly can for you. And it works phenomenal. Now, just like any other bank feed, part of the reason we're always getting statements as well is it's always possible that there may be a duplicate transaction or something that's missing. But hey, we all understand that's why we're doing the reconciliations, right? So we make sure you've got all information. This does, though, however, make it to where if you have people that are working in the desktop environment, you can take the transactions and you can export these either to a .qbo, so it can be pulled in, or you can do it to a CSV. There's multiple formats that could be used to be able to export how you would like. Makes it really nice to be able to work and manipulate with the data, especially if you're doing like larger cleanups and if you have to do a whole year's worth of stuff and in that kind of a platform, it's phenomenal. When it comes to actually, I should say before I go to statements, filtering at the top here, it's amazingly powerful. You've got the ability, you can type in, search by a description, it will shrink everything down. You can do it by amount, you can do it by date, of course, by the account. So manipulating and working inside that data, it becomes a lot easier to do.
Yeah, and having an additional, there's a couple export options for those transactions as well. So if
Right.
you're working with a particular account that's having difficulty with bank feed connections, yeah, the ability especially to export directly to QuickBooks. Talk about some of those options and how those have been helpful for you.
Thank you. Thank you for drawing attention to that. So when we say to QuickBooks, that means a .qbo file, right? And I'm not talking QuickBooks Online, but the actual bank format, or a .ofx. You can actually, into QuickBooks Online, all three of these will import into QuickBooks Online. However, the QuickBooks and the OFX, if there's a payee name that's been listed inside of there, it will capture that field as well and pull it in to where if you have matching names in both places, it's going to try to recommend that name automatic, and you have that much less that you actually have to populate when you're dealing with that import process into QuickBooks Online.
Right. Yeah, we all know that the QuickBooks guessing process is not exactly. Yeah.
Their artificial intelligence needs to go back to school. Yes.
Right. Or yeah.
So, and those
Maybe
imports,
start
you know, would be, you pop it in right here, boom, you can do that very easily. Again, for desktop environment, the .qbo is the one that works specifically.
Right.
Which is phenomenal. Now there's another cool trick I've recently learned, and I know we're on a live stream, but I'm going to share it this way anyways. We all know we've got a couple more days till the sunset of 2020 happens on any desktop products, which means they turn off bank feeds and other features. Well, one of the things that you can do is if you're exporting, especially as an accountant user, you can export this stuff to Excel. You can use the batch enter capability to still be pushing stuff into QuickBooks.
Yeah,
So,
and that's a good pro tip, because I think the percentage of the folks that I know of that are working with desktop clients is relatively low, because we're trying to really focus around the core of the teaching, training, the courses and things are really focused around how do you do QBO and do it well for your clients, rather than trying to split up systems, especially because in your experience, I'm gathering you've probably seen they're really trying to push desktop users slowly but surely steering the ship into a continual online subscription anyway.
You ever heard of that the frog in the pot of hot water?
Yes.
I think we're the frog.
Yes.
So,
correct.
I think that's
correct.
the best
Yeah.
way to kind of say that. But
don't have anything against desktop. We do have some users that use it, but yeah, absolutely.
so it is, the environment's changing. So then on the same environment, now we can go to our next tab, we're going to see statements. Now statements is an actually really, it's a cool area. We're doing quite a few different things with this. Not only is it pulling in the statements, but we're always trying to validate and make sure we have all of the data. So when we pull up a statement, we will go through and we're trying to reconcile each of the individual statements. So you go in, it's going to capture from here, OCR wise, hey, here's my beginning balance right at the top here. My ending balance. Are all transactions accounted for or not? And the goal here is, because as we talked about that transaction table, it's powerful. This is a way that if you're just concerned, you can look at a statement and you've got all of them here, and you can still choose to export this way as well. And here you've got, again, Excel, QuickBooks file, the .qbo, and we're also actively progressing and evolving behind the scenes, the direct connections to do QBO. There's more about that coming in the near future of how it's going to be connecting everything else. But
it looks like you guys are also working with Xero and some others, and that's very much in line with some of the stuff that Ben is doing that we talked with him a little bit.
Yeah.
Trying to be able to, over the course of time, maybe start including some stuff about Xero. We just haven't gone that far yet. We're trying to build out all the resources and support around QBO first as kind of the core to serve the folks that are here in the group, and then work towards adding some additional softwares later.
It's smart. It's a different beast. I've worked with both. So, you know, like you just said, the workflows are different. The whole process is different, and it's going to be just a user preference between them. So a lot of people like Xero when it comes to doing like, if they're just doing quick rebuilds or cleanups, like once a year type thing, because they've got such a cost-effective price plan for like companies. And then this would be a phenomenal asset for that, because you use LedgerSync to grab all that transaction stuff, process it, link it and push it in. So
Yeah,
that definitely would be a
that
workflow we could just
has the potential to be a huge time saver, especially for large scale cleanups. And that was another part of the reason why I wanted to go ahead and have you guys come on, is it becomes very clear quickly that like this is not just a bank connection tool. It actually has a lot more utility for a lot of different aspects of running the closing operations every month. But especially trying to do time savers for big cleanups,
Yep.
you know, data missing from different time periods of the bank, or issues with bank connection, then you can much more easily find those duplicates and all the other things.
It also becomes that single source of truth of, you know, when you actually are implementing it across your clients, right?
Right.
You've got a single source of truth. If, let's say, there are certain ones that, heaven forbid, we can't connect to, or there's some difficulties or challenges, well, there's a couple things you can do. Number one, we still have this OCR statement where you can upload your own PDF statement into it and have it process it, and it will drop out in Excel or a .qbo file.
Yeah.
But we also have document storage here as well. So if you want to keep those, great, you upload it, but let's put them in a folder by client, and you still have copies of those here for future reference also.
Mhm.
So again, you're not having it disjointed where you're going different places looking for things.
Yeah, and that's a big thing that we tried to do with LedgerSync, is we tried to consolidate everything we can about banking data into one app. So fetching the data, OCRing bank statements, so you don't have to pay for a fetching service, you don't have to pay for a software that OCRs bank statements, and then document storage. It's all here in one location.
Now, Maurice, you want to tell them about this? I know this is one of your favorite things. You always.
Yeah, I like this feature.
Yeah.
This is a forwarding email address. Each client, every time a client's added, it automatically creates a folder, and you can give this email address to the client, or they can use it themselves, and it will forward. If you put in an email, it will push any type of attachment to this folder. So it's a nice feature. If you've got a lot of documents, your clients, if you got a whole bunch of statements, and rather than send them one at a time, or kind of look for them, or you're on your phone and you're just too busy, just push it. Just put that email address, save it in your contacts, and just push it to your account. And the documents or whatever it is will be attached and sent over to this folder.
Great opportunity for, I mean, obviously we talk about as much of the stuff as we don't put through email is great, but if it's coming to the client that way, set up a forwarding email and it automatically gets pushed over. No touch, handled. It's a major time saver, and you can go in and look at the stuff and see it all very easily.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that occasionally you're going to have a client that's going to need an option like that. We've been trying really, really hard, especially in light of some of the stuff we've learned about the FTC updates. We've been trying really hard to encourage everybody to set themselves up with a secure portal like Keeper, like Lisio, something that's tools that we have personally used, we've personally vetted, right? So we got a chance to personally take a look at LedgerSync and crash test it on one of the bank accounts for one of mine, for instance. That's one of those that's every time you log into QBO, you have to have it send me a code, because they're zillion factor authentication all the way for everything, right? And I understand why, and they're doing it because of the FTC updates as well. But that means that QuickBooks becomes very cantankerous. It becomes very hard to do continuous operations. So we've got some more things that we're going to be doing. But yeah, we try very hard to make sure that when we bring stuff into the group, this group is not like Pitch Fest 2023. This is very much like, hey, this is an actual tool we want to bring your attention to. Occasionally people are asking questions all the time, constantly in this group. It's hugely interactive. And because we're trying to be very protective of that community and not treat it like a pitch fest, we're getting a lot of good tools in front of people to say like, hey, here's where it's going to save you time and how and what that looks like. And all of those things. And so that's why we think this is a really, really good tool. So yeah, talk a little bit more about storage options.
You bet.
That's also a big important aspect of the way that we have to be handling financial information going forward.
So as you can kind of see from the screen here, we are connecting to different cloud providers as well. So your Dropbox, your Google Drive, Box, OneDrive, SharePoint. So you've got the ability, you can connect to those and push in automatically your statements, your transactions, your checks, and even start selecting default folders per client. So it kind of does a lot of that auto sorting and stuffing for you, which is something I've always loved. It's a beautiful capability. So basically that means we now have the ability, you can do folders within LedgerSync. We can connect to your cloud source capabilities. You can upload your own documents. You can upload and parse your own PDFs through it, or you can be using our connections, grab and download through that fetching, the statements, the transactions. And then last but not least, which I've always found to be a major pain, is check images as well. Now,
yeah, that was one of the ones that I wanted you guys to spend some good quality time on, because that is something that can be exceptionally time consuming. And some businesses I've see, write a check every couple months. Some businesses I see seem to go through like 100 checks a week. It's crazy. So it's all over the
better
place.
not be charging them the same price is all I'm saying.
Right.
So,
yeah. There's a reason that we have a quoting call and our own quoting calculator and things, because you've got to pay attention to what the workload is. Absolutely.
So right before I dive into checks, again, I'm a firm believer of transparency, talking about like what works, what doesn't, so forth. We got to talk about, again, when it comes to gathering checks, when we work with the back end, like with MasterCard, that's utilizing an API. So I call it the back door. It's like we have permission to come in, grab this data, and be able to suck it in appropriately. And more banks are creating those connections, and we're making those relationships as well.
Yeah.
With the checks is something we've created internally. And again, especially when you make the connection with that primary admin user, you're going through that front door. So it's the username and password that's allowing you access. And then once you're in there, we're able to go in and scrape the images and bring them down and save them. Now, the beauty of doing it that way is what you guys probably just noticed is when you're looking at the checks, it's no more of this. Let me go click on a check, wait for it to open, download it, save it, click on the check, wait for it to open, like over and over and over again.
Yeah.
You're going to have a list of different checks and their images being displayed right in front of you. Scroll worthy, just as simple as that.
I'm noticing the handwriting on your checks is a little nicer than the ones that I seem to get.
Yeah. I mean,
because there's occasional instances where having the check image, I'll be honest, really doesn't help.
We can't fix Dr. Doodles. I'm sorry. There's just not much we can help with that.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. So reasons to upcharge a doctor's office, handwriting penalty.
We do have the ability. I think you can zoom in and be like, what the heck is that an A? Is that
right?
You can obviously get as close as you can. And then, so for me, for my workflow, what this would look like is I got multiple monitors. I'd have two of them pulled up. On one, I'd have my QuickBooks Online pulled up, right? On the other one, I'd have LedgerSync sitting there, and I would be quickly updating in the bank feed the checks that are still sitting there waiting for me to process, just putting the name, adding the memo in, assigning a category, because there's no other way. We have to visually see this stuff, especially if they're handwritten, to type it in, but it's the most efficient way to go through it instead of going one at a time. Yeah,
being able to do that has the potential to be a very, very significant time saver, because there are so many different things that happen. If you're logged into the bank, even with accountant access, and you're trying to go through, find the check images, you have all these different timeouts on different windows and things, and
click the wrong thing, back to the list, the wrong place.
Right. Yeah. And then you lose whatever sort that you had. And then, so it's, so you can burn many of those precious 15 minutes doing that. And so that's one of the things that I'm going to always encourage people to weigh is what are the costs to you for the tool, what are the costs to you? And I know we'll get there, but versus the time that it's going to save you each and every month. And does that time saving of all the 15 minutes is here and there give you the time to serve another full client, right?
Amen.
If that's the case, then there is a clear value add to using the tool for that client, right? And so that's some of the ways that we're trying to train people to think about these tools and how to use them.
You nailed it. I mean, it's you're trying to buy back time is what you're really trying to do. So the way with LedgerSync it works great is, again, if you have one client that has some, pardon my podunk bank that just doesn't connect to anybody, that doesn't mean you don't use LedgerSync. It means you use it for everybody else, because if you can still save the time by every account that is actually connected, that's where the benefit of it is. I will say that part of what we do in one of our positions is once a month, right before we're getting ready to close, the week before, we have a person that goes through and it's both in QuickBooks Online and LedgerSync, does a quick review to make sure everything's connected. There's no changes. Somebody didn't add an account, somebody didn't change a password, somebody didn't do any of that. So when it comes time to start doing the process, we're already ahead of it and we're already capturing all the data and we can get to work. So planning that strategy is a very, very important part of that whole process, of course.
Yeah. And that's some of the other resources that we're building out for them is how to put into place those SOPs and what do they look like and how to go through checklists and make sure that everything is done completely for clients, and you're not going to be getting steps out of order so that you're halfway into a cleanup and go, what's this account, what are we transferring, where is this going, what's going on now, because you can create headaches. So it's less of an issue when you're only working with a few clients, much more of an issue if you're working with many of them. So yeah, there's a lot of challenges there.
So before we go into pricing stuff, and then I was going to hand that over to Maurice, I wanted to double check. Did we have any comments and feed that I want to make sure we're helping answer questions for people. So if you've got,
I haven't seen any pop up yet. And so one of the things that we'll be doing is we'll be linking back to this post. So every time somebody brings up a question about, oh, hey, I'm having issues with this bank or this statement, we're going to be able to point them back to this post and say, hey, go check this out. We did an interview and a demo with these guys. That way we can always be pointing them back to the tools, right? And that's the kinds of stuff that we're building out. So we don't have questions at the moment. So I think we can roll into what the structures look like for you guys.
Maurice, do you want to take over that part?
Yeah, so the pricing is pretty basic. It's $16.49 per client per month. And what that gives you access to is 8 bank logins. Just want to be clear, not bank accounts, but 8 bank logins. That means Wells Fargo, American Express, Chase, Bank of America, etc. Right? No one has more than 8. It's ridiculous.
I have one personal client that has, I think, maybe 25 or 30. And so I have seen the exception to that.
Really?
But that's another reason. Well, they wanted me to work on the first like 8 or 9 accounts. Then so the quote went out for that. We kind of started work, and then they changed over to bring in, I kid you not, like 13 or 16 totally different accounts from the original ones that were in the quote.
Wow. Look at it this way. The bank fees they pay for all those monthly statements will actually be less than the additional charge from LedgerSync to put those extra accounts on.
Legitimately. Yeah. The bank fees across all those different accounts, you don't even want to know. You just don't want to know.
Awesome.
If I could get them to condense down, I could save them more than my monthly fee. Okay. It's obscene.
That's crazy.
I wish that was a joke. But yeah,
I think watching right now, he means it in a positive way.
Right.
That's a lot of mail that they're getting every month.
Yeah.
So that's my anti-sales pitch for doing personal bookkeeping. Just maybe don't.
And then the only other fee is for checks. It starts at $4 for the first 5 checks, and it just it goes up. There's a tier system. It caps at $100 after 250 checks. Someone has more than 250 checks for the month, it just stops at $100. And that's it. That's the only fees that we have, only those 2 fees. We do offer volume discounting. If you've got more than 50 clients, it drops by 20%. We'll work with you whatever we can on pricing. We want to be as fair, and we understand everyone's starting off, et cetera. So we'll do the best we can for you.
Sure.
Maurice, there's one area that I realized just even talking about this part that we didn't touch base on, which is even included in all that pricing is you can have additional team members inside of LedgerSync. And this is something I definitely should not have skipped over. You can invite different employees into LedgerSync and assign specifically, hey, I want employee A to only work with these clients, and then employee B to only work with these clients. So you can separate, access to those different people. Super, super, super important.
Yeah, that's a very helpful thing to be able to assign them individually, because that's a very needed thing for anybody that's trying to grow into that sort of 6-figure accounting bookkeeping firm range. And that's one of the things that we're working with people. If that's consistent with what their goals are, we're working on helping them to get into that range, and being able to do that. Most of them have to be, using and leveraging contract labor in some capacity, right? And so there's some aspects of management that we have to help them with at that point in time. So being able to keep track of, this person has access to these, this person has access to those, I have access to all of it as an admin, is also really helpful. And go ahead.
I'm going to add, and Matt can definitely speak to this, is that one of the major advantages to LedgerSync, and you think about it, is if your firm is using outsourced accounting, say in India or the Philippines or whatever it is, the huge benefit of LedgerSync is that the overseas team will only have access to the bank statement, right? So there's if you don't have LedgerSync, there's only 2 ways you can get the data. The outsourcing can get, either you give them access to the bank, which is risky, or what we know with some firms were doing before is that they were sitting down at the end of the month, and they were just sitting there on a weekend, just downloading statements, and then emailing it to the team overseas, which is crazy. And then doing that with checks, downloading, right? That's crazy. With an outsourced team, they come in, they log in, they see the data, and that's it. That's all they're going to see.
Yeah. And one of the things that we've seen that's kind of an intermediate there is using something like Google Workspace on the back end with a Google Drive and things, and a US team member downloading the statements and then passing those, the overseas teams or whatever contractors would have access to the drive and, whatever selected folders and things for specific clients. But even still, there's additional communication issues, and then everything with the time delays. It's
fun.
We
use a company called Analytics that, again, it's based out of India. And when you bring on an outsourcing company, you still have to do some initial training, but the company is phenomenal. I've been with them for 5 years now. Went out to India to go visit them. I wanted to learn more about the culture, the people, everything else. And more important, even the security was a big part of it for me. So I always love to share that when I was there, I took a USB drive and just randomly started sticking it into computers to see if it actually would read or not. And it didn't.
Yeah.
So the reason to bring it up, though, is we were very protective of that data, right? So we would invite them into LedgerSync and they could grab the data from there, but we never had to share access to any banks, anything else whatsoever.
Yeah, you're putting up a very important and needed security layer between contractors and the financial information of your clients, which is a thing that especially because of the updates from the FTC, are a thing that you must do absolutely now. That's a thing that we always should have been doing.
Yeah.
But not everybody thinks in terms of how to build up these systems. And so, yeah, that's why we're going to see, I think, a lot more like, hey, here's a training on how to update your firm to be compliant or whatever, right? $9.97 special course offer, I'm sure.
Love it.
Ours will probably be less than that because we're going to try and bring the information to people for free so that they can spend the money instead on hardening their target against the hackers and things. But yeah, one step at a time.
So I always like to give one last little tip workflow wise to try to help people out. And one of the biggest challenges, since we're always talking about bank connections, is multi-factor authentication and dealing with those tokens. So part of the reason I'm working with Maurice is it's all about workflows and helping figure out what's the best way to do stuff. We use Dialpad, as you saw earlier. So Dialpad is a VoIP system. And the way we've handled this is we set up an extra line. It cost me $7 per month, which is my security line. And then in my email setup, again, everybody should be looking at this here if they're not already. But if you use an email, we set up a special email, security at blah, blah, blah. And then when we register any of our like accountant access type things, we register that number and that email specifically, because with my team, the message will come into Dialpad. Anybody on the team can see it, but then it's also integrated to Slack. So my outsourced team can go to a specific Slack channel and they could see it. So if they have to make a request for access to something, only the person who actually is waiting for that access knows what it's for. But it took me out of the middle of having to be the one to chase and send these tokens to people. So it's just a quick little workflow tip that can really help that's related to this environment.
Yeah, that's another thing that we're definitely starting to discuss with people. So that's a good tip because we're trying to start getting them to think in terms of how do you build to the level of setting up to operate with a team instead of trying to run everything solo forever. Because that'll wear you out pretty quickly. So we're trying to get them to start thinking about that. And there's some folks that are transitioning, but we kind of have the full gambit. We have everything in the group from true beginners that aren't even sure how they ended up finding this group. And then we have the other end where we have CPAs that are sort of like waiting and they're hiding in the reeds. And then as soon as they see the word tax, they pounce, right? And so it's sort of everything in between. And that's fine. Like we want them to have input, right? But again, the goal is to make sure that we're building the community to allow people to get access to the right tools to do the job well, new stuff to help them stay compliant so that they don't get themselves in trouble, and all of this other stuff, because there's so many blind spots that we're trying to protect them from for all these things so that they can grow in this community and build up their income to achieve their goals, but do it with someone else watching their back. Right. Instead of being sold to all the time from, stuff that everybody comes and pitches everything new every week or whatever. So we'll definitely be pointing people back to this traffic. I haven't seen any questions come in. I think we're a little lighter on traffic than we are most weeks, almost by a factor of about 10, depending. So there are a lot of people really excited. But what I'll do is I'll make sure to point them back to this and post a reminder. A bunch of them will see what this is, but I'll make sure to follow up with a bunch of them because they were all looking forward to hearing about this. But I think a lot of them today are scrambling to try and finish the close from last month and start pulling some of those credit card statements and things. So this will be timely, I think, for a lot of them, but it'll be a little slower trickle of traffic. So.
Well, so the areas they can follow up onto this, because we would love to have those conversations with them. We do a weekly demo every week. So if you go to the LedgerSync website, ledgersync.com, you can schedule a book into a demo. I will tell you, we limit the demo to a number of people, a smaller size, on purpose, because we do it very much like this, where we invite people up, they can ask questions, interactive. So again, we're not here to just pitch and sell something. We want to show you how it works and answer your questions.
Sure.
So
And I'll
that's,
make sure that the link is posted in the comments to this so that everybody that comes back can see it.
and then
Yeah,
another one is, go ahead, Maurice.
Yeah, no, go ahead, go ahead, go
I
ahead.
was just gonna say, another one is, if you have additional questions on things, some of the stuff I've even talked about, I'm on Facebook under Matthew Fulton. It's also the tag name Spoticus. It's what I always go on stuff. You can reach out to me, send me a message. If you've got some questions, I'm happy to try to help answer questions there as well. So we're here to help and, share knowledge with the industry.
Yeah, and we were also available on chat. We've really tried to make ourselves accessible. So if anyone has questions, just come to LedgerSync.com website, and there's actually going to be a person that's going to answer your chats, or we'll call you.
Yeah, that'll be very helpful because there'll be people are on all different kinds of crazy schedules right now. And so especially with school and everything just ending, this is always a hard month, but we'll make sure to keep pointing people back to this and say, hey, follow up here if this is an issue, because this is something that for a lot of folks, this is going to be, I think, a really helpful tool. So
I posted on the chat the link to the demo.
there you go. Awesome. I'll make sure that gets set up so that they can book, and that will help people to be able to make lots and lots and lots of useful additions. So lots of really interesting tools that I think this one especially is going to be really, really helpful. So we haven't gotten a chance to connect with the guys from Lisio and some of the others, but we're going to try and connect with them as well, because not everybody works well with each and every individual tool, but we're going to try and keep pointing them to good ones that's going to allow them to absolutely buy back some of their time and have a little better control. So
Yeah. Cool.
Thank you
we're
for having
really
us
glad
on
to have you
today.
guys
Yeah,
on.
thank you so much. Thanks so much for having us, and appreciate it.
Absolutely. We'll look forward to talking to you further, and we'll see how many people this tool can help, because I think it's going to be a good number.
Great. Thank you. That'll be amazing.
All right.
Have a
Take
great
care.
weekend. Thanks,
You
everybody.
guys as well. Bye-bye.
Bye.